Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, making his triumphant return to That Nerdy Site Show, we have Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing great. I'm glad to be back.
Excellent to have you back. Welcome back. And Cameron Abbott, who's been with me for a lot of the last shows recently. So, it's old hat with him. But how you doing, Cam?
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What is going on? So today we're going to be talking about what Frank's been up to, like what he's been playing and stuff since his computer has died and he hasn't been able to really be on a lot of the content, including stuff like Days Gone, which is why that's kind of the image right now on the video version of the show. We've got updated Mass Effect Legacy Legendary Edition thoughts, and then I also have thoughts on Stonefly as well as Bo Burnham's Inside that we're going to be talking about. But before we dive into any of that, a little bit of housekeeping for you. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful monthly Patreon producers did. We have Pam Larson, Sherry Starkey, Teresa Wilkinson, and myself, Trevor Starkey. Thank you to all of them for helping support us. If you do support us, even at the $1 or above tier, you get early access to a special bonus episode of That Nerdy Site Show. This month's early access episode is me and Cam sitting down and playing through some of the beginning parts of Final Fantasy XIV Online as I once again attempt to get into that MMO. So you can check that out if you're over there. It was something a little different for us where it's more let's play than podcast, but we tried to kind of keep it going so that if you are just like an audio listener, that there's not ever really any huge dead time. But it's definitely one that's going to suit you better if you watch it than just listening to us talk about it. But with that out of the way, let's dive right on in. Frank, what have you been up to, man? Where you been? How's life been in the tail end of the quarantine times? I don't think we've had you on maybe since our like Game of the Year stuff. I don't remember when the last thing we actually had you on for was. Apart from like you made a little cameo. You borrowed your friend's computer for like the WandaVision That D Plus show, but in terms of like this show in particular, it's been a while since we've had you on. So how you been?
Yeah, no, I've been doing good. Work has definitely been keeping me busy, like actual work, so that's definitely been a lot of it. And then the PC died, and I changed plans on that a couple times because as some of the the nerdy people out there may know, it's not easy to get some PC parts right now, even still after everything that's happened. And there's like chip shortages, and people still want CPUs, and like the new NVIDIAs are coming out, and like I can't. I'm not even gonna hold my breath on trying to get like a 3080 Ti or something, but. I do have a kind of a temporary build going right now, and so I'm excited to hopefully get like a better build going again in the future. So that's something I can keep everybody updated on if anyone wants to hear fun PC specs and problems.
Very exciting.
Yeah, right. Because here's the thing: I needed to be able to do TurboTax.
Yeah,
my favorite PC exclusive.
Yeah. Speaking of, I filed like back in February, and my bank account finally has like the tax refund, the federal tax refund sitting in my like pending status, because I always have to file by paperwork because of actual like weird things going on behind the scenes or whatever. But so yeah, I've just been like waiting for months for my federal tax refund, and it looks like it's finally about to hit my bank account. So yay! But yeah, thank you TurboTax for like having that done in February and just kind of sitting on it for a while now. So you've been playing Days Gone. Anything else you've been playing before we dive into primarily probably the Days Gone stuff?
Yeah, because kind of eventually the last time, or when I kind of got, I'm trying to think of the way to word it, but when my PC died and I wasn't able to be on content anymore. The last thing I was playing was Ghost of Tsushima, because I had just kind of started and we were just kind of doing Game of the Year stuff.
Yeah.
So I did a quick update.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. It's been a while.
We don't have a ton of time to get into it, but I beat it. I platinumed it. I mean, amazing game. I knew going in it was going to be amazing, and I only put it so high on my list because I didn't think it was fair to just be like, well, I know it's great, so I'm going to bump it way up into the top. But after beating it, I'm like, man, this is like top 3 in my game of the year list in retrospect. But that was a great game. I even got into the online for like 20 hours or something. Like nice. I got to the point where you could do the raid, and I tried the raid, and I couldn't beat it, and that's where I fell off.
That's fair.
That raid is notoriously difficult.
It's really hard, especially if you don't have like, you have to know exactly what you're doing and be coordinated, and it's like timed, and it's really hard, and that's where I fell out. But it was fun up until then. It was a fun like grind, and just because it's just all the combat again, but the combat's so good, and it's like there's like capture points you have to defend, and that's where I mean I guess you played it a bit too, but I mean like man that was fun for me.
Nice.
After that I went into Control. And because I had never played Control, I missed that. But then that was a free PS Plus game, which is going to be a running theme in the next couple. But I beat that. I got the platinum in that, and that was the Ultimate Edition too. So I actually went through and did all the DLCs, which the Alan Wake DLC was pretty cool. The other DLC I thought was pretty weak. But the Alan Wake DLC I thought was really cool. And it does kind of set up for like Alan Wake 2 or Alan Wake something. So I was really like, are they really? I really hope they do something with Alan Wake, because it made me more interested in like an Alan Wake game.
Yeah, maybe we'll see something at E3. I know they've kind of teased that they're working on at least 2 games, I think, in development. Like one in particular, I think is like Epic Store exclusive or something like that. But I think they're working on a couple other projects. So yeah, maybe we'll see them return to the world of Alan Wake proper. Very cool. I just circling back to Ghost. Convenient that even though you hadn't played it or whatever, or you'd only played like a little bit of it at Game of the Year time, it was still our overall site Game of the Year. So it just
I'm happy about that.
Your love for it just would have like bumped it up and made it an even more clear cut winner for our Game of the Year stuff. So cool. So then Control. Anything else?
Yeah, and then after Control, I kind of didn't know what to get into, so I finally went into Yakuza, or I started with Yakuza for the first time. Obviously, it's been that series that's been talked about for forever, and I think we've all kind of just started up and gotten into it recently. But that was another old free PS Plus game. I've had it for forever, and I finally was like, I downloaded it, and I just launched it, and because I was struggling between like, do I do Yakuza 0 or Yakuza 1? And it finally just came down to like, I'm just gonna start, and like I just want to get in and see it, and it totally captured me, and I love it.
Which one did you start
with? Yakuza Kiwami 1.
Okay, that was where I started too.
Same here.
Well, and that's what I think it's a fine way to start, especially because like I think there's things they like call back to from like Zero or like flashbacks, especially with like the RC car stuff. But it's like it's not like you can't put it together. And I do want to go back to Zero, but I'm kind of just going in release order right now. But I loved Kiwami 1 so much, and I had like a ton of things I want to say about it. And when Cam finishes it, I think we could sit down for like a spoiler cast if you guys are interested.
Sure. I mean, it's like at this point, because I played Kiwami 1 and 2 and then 0, and then I just jumped ahead to Like a Dragon. So like at this point, like my memories of Kiwami 1 and like that story in particular, actually like the story itself, I absolutely like could do a spoiler cast on. It's like, okay, which side quests and which other miscellaneous characters start popping up in other games is where where I'll get a little murky, but Cam's definitely playing that one on his stream, so we could absolutely sit down and do that sometime.
I can't imagine that there would be too many carryovers, just because so many of the side quests are super generic, and they're like in their thing. But I can see some of like the standout characters coming back for sure.
Yeah, it's more like, because you start getting side quest characters that do start like popping up in, like they have a similar side quest in the second game, or going back in time and seeing like the same character, like Frank mentioned, like the RC racing stuff plays a role in both games, and it's like, okay, well, like that is a involved side quest that has like 7 or 8 different like little mission stories along with it, that I would be like, oh, I don't remember which ones happened in Kiwami 1 versus which ones happened in Yakuza 0, but yeah, it'd definitely be a fun one to chat about. And Logan in particular also loves Kiwami 1, so we could get him in on that too. He reviewed it back when he was over at IP, so we could do a whole big old chat about it once Cam wraps up his time with it. So yeah. Very cool. Anything else before diving into the Days Gone stuff?
Just in short on Yakuza, like I really liked Kiwami 1, and then after that I bought Kiwami 2 and played through all that, really enjoyed it, bought the remaster that has 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
I finished 3. 3 kind of took the wind out of my sails. It dragged me down a little bit. That's the first one on the PS3, but that's not a remake, that's a remaster. So you literally kind of take a step backwards in time, and that kind of took the wind out of my sails.
Yep.
And then but then 4 got me back. I went into 4. And because I had something mildly spoiled, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I fired it up. And at this point, I was getting a little bit burned out. So that's why I stopped after 4. But I was able to beat 4. And 4 also kind of reinvigorated my love for the series again. So now I'm like, all right, I got 5 downloaded, ready to go. But that's why I know, of course, now I know on the backlog, it's 5, 6, 7, 0, Judgment. Like now I have this giant stack of games to try to go through.
Yeah, I also bought like all the other ones, and after Kiwami 1 and 2 and then 0, I was like, I'm kind of like ready for a change of pace, so that's why I went to like a dragon and the very turn-based combat of that one. Had a great time with it, but yeah, like 4 games of Yakuza, I'm like, okay, I don't really need to hop back into 3, 4, 5, and 6 yet. But it's definitely like on there. I've got it like. I have them on the systems to do eventually, so I can appreciate like the burnout is real on that front. Yeah. Cool.
Oh yeah, and because they're great games, and like the story also keeps me going through a lot of it. But it's like I did a lot of the side stuff, so they're dense. It's just dense. It's like having a huge meal, and just doing it. It's like Thanksgiving every week.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're doing a lot of the side stuff. Cool. Anything else, or are you ready to dive into Days Gone?
Well, so I'm not going to get super deep into it, but in between Yakuza and Days Gone, I did play Battlefield 5 for a little bit because that was another free PS Plus game, and I love first-person. I'm not a Battlefield guy, really, and I know that going in, but I like first-person shooters, and I figured, like, okay, if I get a little linear campaign, like, I played Battlefield 1, and I was just expecting that again, like a little linear campaign that kind of takes you over across the front. But that's not what Battlefield 5 is. Like, it does have the little mini campaigns that kind of take you around the front, but even the first one I started, I didn't even finish because it dumps you into this, after a stealth mission, it dumps you into this open world with 3 bases. It's literally just Far Cry, but it's like bad Far Cry because Battlefield's not built around like Far Cry mechanics where they're like, I give them credit for, like, there's land vehicles and air vehicles, and you can go get in a plane. Like, it has the Battlefield stuff in there, but you die in 2 hits. There's no way to heal. All the weapons are terrible because it's World War I. Like, do you know how hard it is to take out an outpost with 40 Germans with, like, no technology? Like, it's not Far Cry, and I don't, like, I appreciate them doing something different, but I really, like, it seems like it was just a lot of like copy and paste of stuff, and there was even stuff of like people falling through the world and textures not meeting together, and I'm like, man, this feels so fast and like slapped together. Like, it feels like they didn't have time to do like crafted linear levels, even though the cutscenes and everything were amazing, but it wasn't enough to keep me going. I stopped after like 2 hours.
Yeah, I remember,
and that's what led me into Days Gone.
I remember Battlefield 5 having a lot of like problems around it, because that was also the one where they were like, hey, here's our battle royale mode, which like nobody got behind, and like basically was just dead on arrival. So
And
sorry to hear that like it still is
afterward.
having all these issues all this time later.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought was weird too, is because like there was a campaign. There's 3 separate like campaign story arcs, or 3 or 4, and the last one wasn't even there at launch. It came out after, and it's not even like paid DLC. It just wasn't there, and it came out free later. And then the mode you're talking about, Firestorm, wasn't there either. So even when you load it up, it's kind of like light on content already. And then I'm like, and half of this wasn't even here at launch. It's been like a year and a half, so I don't know. I'm not here to just rag on it, but I was like, even for like a free PS Plus game, I was like, wow, I'm so glad I did not actually like pay money for this as like a game, especially because I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. All right, then moving on to Days Gone. Just real quick before we get your thoughts on it, Cam, have you played Days Gone at all?
No, I have not. That's why I've been silent about it.
Okay. Cool. Then yeah, tell me your Days Gone thoughts, Frank. Another
Yes.
PS Plus game, so
I've been firing through them.
Yeah.
but that was I liked it. I early on I feel like it kind of obviously it starts off slow and I think it kind of drags its feet for a while, but I definitely was enjoying it. But I had that moment in my head all the time where I was thinking like, why am I still playing this? Like even just a couple hours in, and I'm not like. I was just like, is it because it's like super fun or the story's engaged there? But I couldn't really come up with like a good particular answer. I think the thing it was just scratching that open world itch. Like I definitely like an open world, go around, check off some boxes. And I do like the motorcycle and I liked like some of the stuff they had and what they were doing. But then eventually as I kept getting in further and further and further and eventually like this is like hours and hours in, you're more powerful, it's more fun, and you can go around and you can fight more people obviously. But then the story, it never like the story I think is weak a little bit because I feel like there's never really like I like that they kept it kind of like low key, like there's not like this we're gonna save the world or we're gonna like try to, well I'm sorry Cam I didn't mean to get that far into it.
That's fair.
But I like that it wasn't like this crazy big overall story. It was a little bit more low key about like just a couple characters and kind of the people you meet. But then there's also like I feel like it's that thing of like there's not really like a good antagonist or a good like I feel like they introduce things and then just take them away really quickly and things don't get to breathe. And then but then that's weird to me when they drag their feet over some other stuff for so long. Like but that like by the end I was engaged in the story and I wanted to know like where are they going and how is this going to wrap up and like what's going to happen. But at the end I still wasn't like, yeah, that wasn't like amazing, and there was a lot of plot points where I felt like I was 2 or 3 steps ahead of where the game, like I was ahead of the game, but I had to wait for the game to catch up and then be like, haha, this is it. And it's like, well yeah, I figured that out a while ago, and if anything you just kind of you told me that this was going to happen, then you took it away from me and then you gave it back like it was a surprise, and I was like, I don't know, like there's just weird things like that. And overall, I just think the game was a little bit rough around the edges in a lot of ways, because even like the way that like the voice conversations where you're constantly getting radioed, which is just a little bit annoying anyways, especially because there's times where I couldn't hear the radio over the bike because I'm flooring it on these like highways or through these mountains and the engine is super loud and somebody's talking to me on a radio like from however far away. But then it was weird to me how sometimes how that lined up with like the actual story like didn't line up super well a lot of the time, for at least the way when I played the game, where like somebody would call me and they'd be like, hey man, like we'd have a great conversation, they were super happy, they'd be like, come back to base, I crafted some items for you, and I'd be like, oh thanks, and then I'd show up and then they're mad at me and like like because of whatever happened in this, like it's just weird how like it felt like I was like, did nobody like go through once they had all this together and figure out how all the pieces like fit together? Because there's also no spoilers, but there's like a weird mission I thought that felt really out of place where like they're like there's like a camp getting attacked by another camp, but then you have to go all the way to another camp who says they get attacked, but they get attacked by a completely different group of marauders that's completely unrelated to the story. And there's no reason for me, at least from my own understanding, why that mission is there at that moment. Because even if the next mission was like, Deacon, while you were gone, we got attacked and they kidnapped, but like the next mission has nothing to do with it. Like you just go to Copeland's camp, do a mission, and then come back. And it's just like, there's just weird things like that where I was like, why was that mission not like 12 hours ago?
Yeah, there was a lot of, and especially with like Ghost of Tsushima in your rear view. Like I played it obviously before Ghost, but like now thinking about how Ghost handles like its mission structure and its side quests and stuff like that, like that was definitely one of, I think, Days Gone's kind of one of the big criticisms that a lot of people had for Days Gone was the way it like paces its story. Is like there's like the golden path, but it will lock the golden path behind certain like side quest missions and stuff, and you have to go do these other things. You can do them, way later, and if you do, it ends up messing up with like the timeline and the narrative that you're kind of running into in a lot of that stuff. I also remember being like issues where it'd be like, okay, the next person that's going to give me a mission is in this camp, but I had to like leave the camp and then come back for them to give the mission and stuff like that. There was a lot of weird wonkiness around kind of the mission structure and the layout to that game. I ultimately like still ended up enjoying the combat and driving around the world, but yeah, that game was, I think, way too big for what it was trying to do, especially, and I know other people have talked about this as well, but like like you play through a good chunk of that game in like this first area, and then you hit a turning point where it's like, okay, now here's a whole new section of the map for you to go through. It's like, and it's just as big, and it's like, oh my god, there's still that much more of the game ahead of me. Oh god, this is going to be a long one.
I had that exact feeling because it kind of, I thought there was more to the game, but then it makes it feel like it's wrapping up. And then I was like, oh, are we wrapping up? Like, what? Okay, this didn't go how I thought it was going to go. And then it's like, well, guess what? There's a whole half of the map that you haven't been. And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah. It's definitely, like, I appreciated that there, like, especially because I wasn't trying to play it on, like, a time crunch or a review crunch or anything like that. I appreciated that there was just a ton of stuff there. And especially because I think when I played it was basically like right after I had lost my job at the community foundation, and so I was like, well, I've got a whole bunch of free time now, so I'm gonna spend a week just hopping into Days Gone, and so like I appreciated that there was plenty of there to like keep my mind off of other things, but yeah, it was definitely like, oh, there's a lot of this game, and I feel like it could have very much been edited down. To a more like manageable experience, but at the same time, like as we've now since found out that hey, Bend isn't really working on a Days Gone 2, like I guess we're probably okay that like they put in as much as they did in that game, because I like ultimately I really enjoyed Deacon's character as well as especially like once he starts really interacting with other people, including I don't remember who his partner was anymore, but like I enjoyed like Sarah. Like I enjoyed her. I enjoyed like his friends at the camp and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because even Boozer like grew on me in their relationship, and I felt like even though there's some moments that I don't know if they could like completely earn, but there were some like really earnest moments between them, and even like when they blow up the thing and he's like makes the joke about the arm where he was like, did this happen before? And then Deacon has like a genuine laugh that I feel like I haven't heard in like from a protagonist. Like I know it's weird to say, but like Nathan Drake has like that cocky kind of like haha, but like I feel like Deacon had like an actual like laugh, like, oh, my friend told me a joke in this weird moment, like at the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like there's some things that got me there with some of that. But then
So,
I think sorry, go ahead, Cam.
Oh no, keep going. Finish your thoughts.
I just thought it's like for me it was kind of I think we're kind of on the same page mostly, but it's like the definition of like good, not great.
Yeah.
Like and like because there's good ideas, there's good things, but I'm totally with you where if it was edited down, maybe if it was more linear, and even I think like they're like especially with I think you bring up like with Ghost of Tsushima is a good comparison where like they handle their side missions and with some of their side characters so much better. Where if Days Gone had taken like that approach where like, oh, Boozer has like a side quest storyline that you go on around the map, and same thing with like those other characters, like because they kind of have that because it tells you like, oh, this mission is for this person, or you'll talk to them on the radio or whatever. But I wish there was more of like you going with them into the world to do a mission, or like how like The Last of Us, like you're with other characters and you go through things, or they send you on missions and stuff. And I think it could have like been a little bit more edited down and like linear like that.
Yeah. I'm also curious how it performed for you because I was playing it like 6 months after launch. It notoriously had a lot of like problems at launch. Even when I jumped into it 6 months later, I still was annoyed by like how slow it was running at times and the performance and bugs and stuff. So how was it for you now? A year and a half on.
No, I appreciate you bringing that up because I actually did forget. That was something I did want to mention is because I did have a lot of performance issues. No crashes. I will totally give them that. Never crashed. And at the beginning of the game, not a ton of issues. It ran perfectly fine. And then when there would be like a ton of enemies on screen, there would be some slowdown, which I was like, that's fair. They're rendering like 30 horde. And like it would be a small horde, not even like one of the huge ones. Mm-hmm. But then like, after I know this sounds weird, but it's like after I left my game running for like 2 weeks or whatever, I was playing it because I would just put it in rest mode. It's like it started to perform worse and worse and worse and worse, even when I was just driving around the world doing nothing.
Yeah.
So there was actually a moment where I saved, closed the game, relaunched it, and then that actually did kind of help with a lot of my problems. Mm-hmm. But it's like when there's a giant horde or a lot happening, I get it. But there was times where I was just driving around and it would just like come to a crawl.
Yeah.
I also definitely died once or twice because of that. I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, the game slowed down. But there were times that like there was like 5 zombies in front of me. The game slowed down so I couldn't kill them, and then they were on top of me and they killed me because it speeds back up and they just like get you. And like it is what it is, but that definitely happened to me once or twice.
Yeah, especially I had the exact same thing where like I was playing it largely all in like, one bout over the course of a few days or whatever. And so going into rest mode in between sessions, like, 20 hours in or whatever, I started up and it was just a chug. So I was like, all right, let me try like turning the thing off and even like restarting the PS4, I think, and rebooting it and whatnot. And so yeah, I'm glad I'm not alone on that, and hopefully like all this stuff they've been tweaking to it to make it run better, especially for like PS5s, and then of course for the people on PC, I'm sure it's running way better. But yeah, it was still like irksome that it was running into those issues, I'm sure. Any final thoughts there on Days Gone before we move on?
I did surprisingly like some elements of it, and there's even some story parts in the main story, like the characters, because there's also I'm not going to get more into it, but there's a whole character Lisa that you have that's part of the main story. I thought that was actually pretty interesting, and just the way they kind of handle some of that, and the way that she actually kind of doesn't like Deacon, and it's not like this, oh, you're my hero. It's like, you actually made my life worse by like saving me, and I don't want anything to do with you. And I'm like, that's really interesting. I thought like a lot of interesting things, but a lot of things that just like ultimately kind of fall flat or just are kind of stay at that like minimum level. But that's where like I think it's, like I said, it's good, not great, and I'm not super upset that we're not going to get like Days Gone 2. But I also am more excited and interested to see them take all those elements of Days Gone and then put that into a different IP or something. Like, because the motorcycle I think is great. I think some of the open world stuff is fine. Like, I thought some of the stuff with like the MC and the motorcycle club, like I think they could do a lot more with that. Like if they could do like a modern day motorcycle club gang, like I think, or a game like that, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But it'd be like Lost in the Damned, the
Yeah.
GTA DLC.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's one I like when I played it. I was like, I think they'll have learned a lot from this, so I would have been cool with a Days Gone 2, and just more like, for Cam, like diving into the lore of that world and what happened, and because some of that stuff does get introduced, especially in the back half of the game, and seeing
there's even
where,
like a post credits, like if you go do the mission, which that left me on the floor almost, where I'm like, they set up for like it's not a cliffhanger, but they're building towards like something, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, it's unfortunately it looks like we won't be heading that way. I also did appreciate that, like, especially like when it got announced, everybody was like, well, how is this going to be different from The Last of Us? Like, you guys already, like, PlayStation already has a, big budget zombie game. How's this going to be? Like, I definitely thought it set itself apart from The Last of Us and anything else really in their first party slate. So, like, ultimately, like, yeah, I'm not gonna lose sleep over not getting a Days Gone 2, but I was open to the idea of a Days Gone 2, and yeah, I hope whatever Bend is working on does kind of take what they learned from it and there allows them to improve and come up with some new ideas. So very cool. So where are you at with the platinum on it? Have you gotten the platinum? Are you working towards the platinum?
I was, because I wasn't sure going in if I was going to finish the game or platinum it, and then eventually I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to finish it. But there's a couple like hard trophies in there, or not even like hard, but like time consuming. But because I looked at the list ahead of time, I was like drifting around unnecessarily a lot. I was like picking up things off bodies, because there's a lot of that. Like, you have to get 500 items off of corpses. You have to drift your bike for 10 minutes. Like, that's just a lot of stuff that just takes time. But I have all those. So it's like, I feel like I have the hardest of the hardest trophies, but I have 4 trophies left.
The one that ended up being the hardest for me, it was like the last one I ended up getting, and I just had to like try over and over again because it's not clear like what it was. It was like you have to drift and boost at the same time or something. Yeah. And it was like I like watched videos of people doing it and tried to and I just could not figure out how to get it work. Finally it popped like randomly or something, like after a good hour of just trying for that one nonstop. And I was like, for this stupid bronze trophy, this should not have been as hard as it was, but that was easily the most annoying one, because other than that, like, it was just, I was enjoying the game, and so I was like doing all the things in the game that I was trying to do. And so yeah, that was the most stupidly pain in the ass one of anything.
I still have that one left too, because it's like I tried and I wasn't able to get it, and I was kind of doing I was going to do what you said. Like, I was just like, I'll look up a video. There's probably a mountain somewhere. Like, there's an optimum.
There's
path.
There is a specific spot that like all of the videos I was seeing, like people tried to do it in like the second half of the world kind of thing. And even trying it there, I was just like, I'm just not, because it's, I mean, like nobody's saying like, okay, I'm pushing this button right now and whatnot. And so it's just like, I don't know what the trophy wants me to do, and nobody's able to explain what I'm supposed to be doing for it. And so it was just infuriating until I find like, and even now I couldn't tell you what I ended up finally doing that made it pop. But yeah, it was just like, this is the dumbest possible trophy. I hate this so much. So I'm sorry you don't have that one out of the way. I would like spend some time trying to get that one before you decide if you want to do everything else, because if you do everything else and that one just ends up being what breaks you, that will be even more devastating.
It's always the bronze trophies that break you on the platinum, man. It's always it's always the same thing, kind of like you said, where you're like, why is this a bronze? You're like, you made this thing that's so hard and you just made it the worst trophy.
Yeah.
The other ones I'm just missing is because you have to knock over some of the anarchist cairns, or like the rock cairns. I only got half of them, and then I finished the mission, so I think I have to go back wherever that cave is. And then the main one I'm worried about is you have to spend 45 skill points, and I've only spent 40, so I need to spend 5 more. And like my main problem is that I've done everything, so like the only thing I have left is hordes. And like I'm stronger now, but it's like it still takes so many of my resources and stuff to fight a horde that I'm like, I'm worried that I'm gonna have to like fight a horde or two, go scavenge for an hour, and then fight like more hordes. So I'm like, I don't know if that might be a breaker too. That and that drift one might be the breaker. I forget what is the other one I'm missing. It's something super simple. Like I'm only missing 4, and they're all super simple. I have everything else.
Yeah. Well, good luck if you end up attempting to stick with it. Like it's definitely one that I'm like, I have it in my library, but like that the drifting one was especially like so freaking stupid, because it was also like you have to have this very particular configuration of your bike, which is not like the optimal configuration of the bike or whatever. It was like you had to.
Oh, that's good to
I
know.
basically had to like downgrade some things on my bike to give me, more boost or drifting or something. Like I don't remember what it was, but that definitely is one of the key elements of it that I didn't realize until later, where it was like, okay, like do it with these items on your bike, and you should be good to go. So try and find somebody that like points you in the direction of what bike you should also have configured.
I know we're moving on, but that was one thing real quick that I actually did really like about Days Gone was the bike, because not only was it a cool way to like get around the world pretty fun and pretty easily, but like I thought it was kind of cool. It's kind of like a mobile base, and it's also cool that you can like upgrade it, customize it. Like it's all the best things you love about those kind of open world games, but it's just in the bike that you get to have around with you. So only thing I wish it was like the horse in like Red Dead or The Witcher, where I wish I could have whistled and the bike would have came over to me. Like that would have made the game 100% improved.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw it because I got to see Days Gone at E3 the year I went, in like not like a behind closed doors demo that like other people were doing of it, and I remember like my first thought was like, oh, so it like the bike is basically just, it's the same kind of combat as like Aloy and the riding in one of the machines or something like that. It's that kind of thing, just in open world Aloy, but on a motorcycle instead of Robo-Dinos. And like ultimately, like I still kind of stand by that initial impression, but yeah, the fact that you can't like just immediately summon the motorcycle to you does kind of like draw a little bit back from it. So you don't want to ever get too far from it. Cool. So we're going to switch over to me real quick. I've been, and I don't think I have a ton to say on this one, but I played through Stonefly. From in particular, our friend Belinda Garcia is the writer of Stonefly. So shout out to her, getting her kind of like her first video game credit. She's currently over at Sledgehammer Games, which will presumably be announcing the next Call of Duty here in the next week or two, whatever, around E3 time.
Can't wait.
So she's clearly working on that as well. But yeah, for Stonefly, this was by Flight School Studio. They were the people behind Creature in the Well. Which is a game I really enjoyed a couple years ago, so much so I 100%ed it on like my Switch when it first came out. I think I like 100%ed it on Xbox too. Like while I was waiting for other games to load up, I would like boot up Creature in the Well. And then when it eventually came to PlayStation, I think I have like the second platinum in that game, because I basically like it came out They didn't end up sending like pre-release codes or anything like that, but like the day it came out, I picked it up and just basically immediately like rushed through it. And so yeah, I'm like one of the first platinums in that game because I just enjoyed it a lot, and it's, you know, a 5-hour game or whatever when you know everything that you're doing.
Was
So
that the guy that beat you in like 5 minutes or something? Like, it's the guy that has the number one. Isn't it like super close to yours? Like,
no, on
I
this
thought you had a story like that.
that was, I think that's most recently. I think that's like the Avengers trying to get that on the PS5. Somebody beat me by like a couple minutes on that. Yeah, no, Creature in the Well was like somebody in China or somebody got it early somehow and had the platinum a couple days before me or something like that. But yeah, like when it released, I'm one of the early platinums on that one. So Stonefly, I was like, knowing that, I was like interested in checking it out. And ultimately, like the gameplay of Stonefly did not click with me. I pushed through and played through to the end to support our friend Belinda, of course. But yeah, I like the whole time I was like, I am not having a ton of fun with this. For those that don't know, Stonefly, you're basically like controlling a mech that. So the whole thing is like you're like bug-sized things. So you're like bouncing and flying around, floating around like trees and stuff like that, and like you're landing on leaves or on branches and stuff, and you're navigating this world that's, you know, a very giant world around you, and you're collecting resources and stuff to power up your mech to go on like other little missions and kind of follow through the story. But it's mostly like you go out into the world, you know, fly around, you land somewhere, you collect the resources. You fight off other bugs that are going to try and like collect the resources before you, or they're going to try and like intercept you, or they will just attack you while you're collecting resources and stuff like that. And there's like a variety of bugs. You've got like your standards that don't really attack you; they just collect the resources out from under you, and so you have to, like, if you want to get those resources, you have to knock them out. But then there are others that are like they'll just like, you know, bite at you and attack you and take down your health. Then there are like slug type ones that will like leave a pool that will either like make you sticky or it'll poison you and you'll start like losing health or something like that. Then there's like daddy long legs that'll like jump up in the air and like spin around. So because a lot of the game requires you to basically be like flying in the air to attack and drop like bombs on the bugs to like stun them and take them out and stuff. And so other bugs will like shoot projectiles up at you in the air, or they will jump in the air and like do a spin attack at you kind of thing. And the biggest like frustration I had was in that style. It's like an inverse to pretty much any platform you've ever played, where it's like you're having to spend most of your time like avoiding attacks and attacking from above, as opposed to like pouncing on a thing and or like punching a thing like while it's in front of you and stuff. So like I fully admit that part of my aversion to the mechanics of this is just it's so different than what 30 years of gaming has been for me, and so it just wasn't clicking too well. But then outside of that, there is like a lot of it's almost similar to Days Gone a little bit, in that there's like a lot of a grind to get through this game. Like it would occasionally be like, okay, here's your next objective, and then I'd try and go to that next objective, and it'd be like, oh, actually, before you go to this objective, you need to power up your mech by, you know, making sure you add this skill. And so I'd be like, okay, what do I need for that skill? And then I'd see like, okay, you need this many resources. I'm like, okay, well, where do I need to go on the map to get those resources? Well, I need to go back to like one of the first level areas to get those resources. Okay, I'm just going to go back there and do some grinding stuff and just, you know, like collect and mine the resources there, and then I can go back to camp. And also, for anybody that's playing this, if you want to go back to camp, it's in your menu, and there's going to be a camp button or like a camp icon on the menu, and you basically need to tap that. The game did not tell me that. I spent like the game will prompt you at certain times like, oh, you've reached a checkpoint, so like now you'll start from this area. Do you want to go back to camp? And you can like push the right button or something like that. If I was just in the world trying to like collect resources, I never was getting any of those prompts anymore. So I went around the world for like an hour just trying to figure out, how do I get back to camp? I tried quitting out and then like seeing if it would start me back in at the camp. It did not. So it's in the menu. There is like a camp button, and you basically need to drag the cursor down and click the camp button, and that will take you back to camp. I hated that so much that like it did not tell me that, and it was so frustrating. I was so annoyed when I finally figured that out. I was like, that is not intuitive at all. So, yeah. Eventually, like, it's another one also, like, I felt super underpowered for like 90% of the game. Then finally, like, once I was fully powered at the end and had every upgrade installed and equipped, then I started feeling like I was okay. But even then, like, I was, one or two hits from an enemy away from just being decimated and having to being killed again or whatever. So yeah, it just didn't click. The story, like the component, that Belinda worked on, I enjoyed that fine enough. It was, it's a story about Anne, is kind of the main character you're playing. She's a mechanic that works with her dad to build these mechs effectively, or work on these mechs, and like the mech that they had gets stolen, and she has to kind of go on this quest to try and like retrieve it. And in doing so, she kind of meets up with this core of other like mech, it's a core, CORPS, corpse, I guess, of kind of mech riders, and she kind of like falls in with them, and they kind of show her the ropes, and you do like quests and stuff with them, and so like there's a bit of it that like the narrative.
Are they at least a fun group of characters?
I mean, yeah, I mean like the character design is great. Like it's.
This world, Trevor, I dropped $20 at the beginning of our podcast because you reminded me that I hadn't bought Stonefly. And for the last 20 or so minutes, you've been telling me why I shouldn't have done that. And now I'm wondering, have I made just a tremendous mistake?
The characters are fine, but
is there anything redeeming about this game that I just bought?
I mean, like, I thought you were into bet games.
You might have a very different experience from than I do.
Because it's a mech game. That's why I wanted to buy it.
Yeah,
yeah.
And that so you might have a very different, like, the combat and stuff might click for you in a way that it just didn't for me. Like take that all with a grain of salt. Hop in, play it. It really just did not work for me. I will say that, like, much like Creature in the Well, the story isn't really the focal point of the game.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely a step up from Creature in the Well, and that you have like a lot more dialogue between these characters and stuff. So like they're like Belinda earned her paycheck on this one kind of thing, and it's a good story, and the characters have good dynamics, but they're not they're not really there even in service of the gameplay. It's kind of like they have this gameplay idea, and so they created a story to help get you from point A to point B, and so like a lot of the interactions with these characters are just like, hey, a character wants this piece of equipment, so they send you out into the world to go to like the next checkpoint of the world to get that piece of equipment or something like that. So,
and I should know, I actually did not enjoy the gameplay of Creature in the Well. So, that's why I was like,
it is very different than Creature in the Well, because Creature in the Well is all built around like that pinball mechanic, whereas
I was just not a fan of that.
Yeah, so. This is just a completely different vibe. So maybe you will really like this one in a way that like I really liked the Creature in the Well mechanics and design. It's still, like, art style wise, it has very much the same kind of Creature in the Well look, because it is a lot of the same art team there, and I like it looked. This one looked better, especially once you get to the point where you can start like customizing your mech. You can, like, by default, you're going to get a mech that's basically going to be like, hey, this is run down and it's all like white and stuff, but you can color code it. You have like 4 different colors. I think that 4 or 5 different colors that you can put on it that will like, like I had mine in very bright primary colors and was like, cool to see that out in the world in a otherwise also very beautiful world. So like the design and the colors of the game I thought was very, very cool and very like my biggest thing really is just the gameplay did not click for me. So if like you put a couple hours in and you have a very different experience, great. I'm very happy for you, and let me like talk to me about it, in a future episode or something. But that's just kind of what I wanted to throw out there. It just didn't. I did not vibe very well with it, and it's I put enough of that on me, but there were also like even from a storytelling perspective, there were times where I felt that the story was getting in the way of the game because of how it was paced. It wasn't like dialogue is happening and it pops up and it leaves at its own pace, or it continues at its own pace. It was like I was never in control of like the story going on, so like I was reading way quicker than the dialogue was like finished.
That
and
gets
so
me
like,
every time.
so I'm done, and I'm like trying to progress through, especially because like if you do die, you go back to like the the camp that you're at or whatever, and there's like a little cutscene of you resting in your little tent thing, and a lot of times Annika will be talking about, like she'll reminisce on something with her dad or something like that. And so because I died, I now have to sit through like 30 seconds of storytelling, which I could have finished in 10 seconds myself if they'd given me the option to like prompt through it, and they didn't. And then on the flip side, there would be dialogue that would happen, and it just happens over on like the corner of the screen. And so if I'm playing like on my big screen TV and I'm just kind of like progressing through, I had to actively like look over to see it, and I know I missed some things because I was worried about like making sure I didn't fall through the world or something like that, as like little dialogue interchanges were happening. So like that's another element, I mean, of like the story isn't what they were focused on entirely. It's something that they certainly wanted to experiment with and explore for this game around. And again, I think the story that Belinda has in there is good. It just isn't the focus of the game. And the game on more than one occasion kind of reminded me of that. So, yeah, those are my general Stonefly thoughts. I mean, like it's a good game. Like there's nothing in this game that's broken or even bad. It's just I didn't like a lot of the elements of the game. So I fully expect other people having wildly different experiences. But those were my experiences with Stonefly. I wanted to make sure I finished it. Like I finished it last night, and then the game, not spoiling or anything, but the game has like a post game kind of dungeon that you can do, a la like a Yakuza or something like that. And it's like one of the trophies, and what like how I knew I was never even going to bother with the platinum on this one is like one of the trophies, like get to wave 100 of that post game dungeon. And I tried it once, and in my first attempt I got to wave 50. So cool, but that also took me like an hour of time to just go through wave after wave of bugs, especially because that combat is like removes one of the most crucial elements that I had in the game. Is it removes your ability to heal your mech manually. You can get an upgrade eventually that like lets you automatically heal it, but it goes pretty slow, and certainly like one wave in this can like devastate you pretty quickly, and it would take quite a bit of time to like heal back up. So I got to wave 50. It gave me like wave 50 was basically like one of the boss fights from the game, like just dropped back in, and I died, and I was like, well, I am deleting this game off of my system forever now. I'm done. I had my time with it. I tried that. I don't need it anymore. So the fact that like I eventually got comfortable enough with the combat that I made it to wave 50 in that like post game dungeon in the first
try.
That's certainly saying something. But yeah, it still never felt great. It just felt like I had learned how to make elements of the system work in my favor more than it ever feeling like natural to me. So yeah, those are my Stonefly thoughts. So Cam and I both have updated thoughts on Mass Effect. Cam has kind of a hard out, so he's going to have to bounce here in a little bit. But Cam, tell us where you're at with Mass Effect at this point.
Where I'm personally at with it is, I forgot how many times I've played through Mass Effect 2.
Okay.
I've played through Mass Effect 2 probably more than a dozen times. I forgot that it's totally my favorite Mass Effect game.
Yeah, 100%.
In the trilogy. It is just top to bottom. Like, I love the story of Mass Effect 1, but I greatly forgot the limitations of dialogue and character options with your companions on the ship.
And romance options too.
Especially with romance options, yeah. And like the diversity of characters, especially regarding like let's be totally real here. as much as people complain about like Caden being like a piece of cardboard cut out and put into the game, Ashley, like the only thing that differentiates Caden and Ashley is that Ashley's just racist, on top of also being incredibly boring.
I mean, she taking the racist aside, not even her poetry stuff. Like I appreciate like the family history that that her character has of like she is a military family and she's constantly living in the shadow of her grandfather who was like the traitor or whatever, or who retreated Jiangxi or whatever it was. So like the only loss to aliens or whatever was on her grandfather. So her name is tarnished and she's trying to like work out of that. Like that, I appreciate that element of it. I could have done without the space racism, but I think she has more going for her compared to like Caden's history with the L2s and the headaches. And I mean, like even though like Caden, I think isn't as boring as everybody makes him out to be, if you dig into his backstory too.
His backstory is actually like super awesome because it turns out that like
he killed his commanding officer kind of thing.
Well, like yeah, it's like, hey, am I gonna have to hunt down this guy that like tortured you as children? No, I snapped his neck with my mind.
Yeah,
and it's like reminder: don't piss off Caden Olenka. He will snap your neck with his mind.
Reminder: don't leave you behind.
Yeah, don't leave you behind. You're gonna be worth keeping around because you can snap Turians with their like border. Like the only thing harder to kill than a Turian is a Krogan. Just like, especially like, oh, you snapped a Turian's neck, which means you snapped its plate, like the plating around its neck, as well. So it's great. I love Caden because he vanilla? Yeah. But guess what? Vanilla, you need some vanilla to understand and enjoy the spice in life. Okay.
I mean, it also, by the nature of Ashley and Caden being a little more on the milquetoast side of things, makes the aliens in your party that much more engaging and interesting. And so, like, sure. that immediately, like, as I was replaying through, I was like, oh yeah, that's like maybe that's why Garrus and Tally and Rex all stand out so much more, is because they're not just boring humans that are here that like have similar experiences to what you've had. Like they have had rich lives and experiences their own in completely different cultures that you like get to learn about in those games.
Yeah. I will also say that when I finished Tuchanka's storyline, so for Morden and Grunt, and when doing Grunts, I reestablished without a single doubt that Rex is the greatest character in Mass Effect. There is no room for doubt in my mind at this point. Like I have played through the game so many times, and when I got to reunite with Rex this time, like my heart burst with joy.
And you guys did the Predator handshake.
It's
you got
so
off
good.
The ship and
yeah,
it's
just that grip, and it's just like, you know, Shepard, we don't let aliens come onto Tuchanka, but I made an exception for you because you're the best. It's like, yes, Rex. And Rex is just like, they'll do what I say because I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happens if they break away? Then my allies, in order to curry favor with me, destroy them. It's like, Rex, you were the best. You were the absolute best, Rex.
I think it's one of the like the renegade like triggers in that, but like the guy that's talking to Rex, you know, starts giving you crap and you basically headbutt him as a Krogan would. And everybody just kind of is like taken back a second and then it's like, I like you.
The shaman just goes, ha, he's more Krogan than you are. It's like, yes. Yeah. Krogans, they're the best. I just love Rex's entire, like, his story arc, especially from, he has the greatest line in video game history. I've said it before. When, the CSEC officer dude, liaison guy to the council says something, he goes, don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining. I've known plenty of dirty CSEC officers in my time. And it's like, Rex is just he's so good. And then he's like, you talk to him and you get in Mass Effect 1 that this is a guy who really does care about his race, but has been betrayed and dejected so many times by just where the Krogan are at, that, like, what's he supposed to do? And it isn't until he's faced with, like, the cure of the genophage that Saren offers, but with it comes the enslavement and kind of like his answer, like confronting his own fears and insecurities about the Krogan species and its future, that he decides that he's going to go back to Tuchanka. He becomes the leader of his own clan, and he ends up uniting all the clans on Tuchanka under him. And it's just, he's the absolute best. Rex is just my favorite person, like my favorite character in the entire game series. I can't wait to go through what I know his story is in Mass Effect 3. And like, don't get me wrong, like I love Garrus. Garrus is top tier husbando. Without a doubt. He is the correct romance choice out of all of the games.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where, am I sad and upset that you don't get to, like, they didn't fix the only problem with the prior Mass Effect games in the Legendary Collection, which is to let you romance him as male Shep? Yes, I do have that problem. But that being said, I understand.
I mean, it's still a great bromance. Like, and that's like the best true. Like male friend relationship in gaming, really. And when you 100%. Go up at the end of 3 and you do the shooting contest, like,
it's great.
You let Garrus win. You let that man win that contest.
You always let Garrus win.
I totally did not.
Oh, bitch.
It's yeah.
Garrus is the best.
I like in like a run of full like Paragon stuff. I was like, hell no, I'm not letting him win because he'll know I let him win. I am absolutely going to be the superior shot here, and made the renegade choice to still make the shot. Yeah.
No, yeah, but anyway, I've just established Rex as just like he is my favorite character without a doubt, and like you can't like anybody who let like I get it. If you didn't have the charm intimidate points and it happens, and so Ashley kills Rex in Mass Effect 1, I get it. It happens to some people. You made wrong choices going forward, or like leading up to that point that you didn't get to make the correct decisions to keep Rex alive. The game locked you out of it. I get that. But if you do that and then you still choose to leave, like to take Ashley with you and leave Caden behind, you are terrible. You are the worst person. I don't care. I don't like if I meet you, I don't want to meet you. Tell me up front that you made that decision. And here's the thing, if you're like, I'm going for the completionist, I want to make every choice going through that, I understand that. But if that's like your canon decision that you go with, you disgust me. You are horrible. You are a deplorable individual, and I want nothing to do with you. I am ashamed that I share the same air to breathe with you. How dare you exist as a person? And like you've made these decisions, and you recognize you've made these decisions, and you think they are the correct decision in life.
And then you go ahead and romance Ashley on top of that?
And then you romance Ashley on top of that? Disgusting. Horrible. You make me want to puke. Like, you are the scum between my toes, dear Darla. Anyway, I digress.
All right. There you go. So, you're having fun, continuing to have fun with Mass Effect 2, reminding yourself how great a game that is. Totally appreciate that. I finished up my playthrough last week of Mass Effect 3, and I basically, like, I think when you and I sat down last week, I was, like, nearing the end, and on Memorial Day, like, my whole Memorial Day was basically just the Citadel DLC and then the end game stuff. Like, I went to bed Sunday night being like, oh, all I've got left is Citadel. Maybe I could do that. But it was like midnight. I was like, I don't remember how long that is, so I'll hold it off till tomorrow. I was glad I did, because like 5 hours into my playing on Monday, I was like, oh yeah, this would have been a very long night if I tried to do it in there. But yeah, Citadel DLC remains my favorite DLC of all time of anything, just because it's a great time, and you get to if you so choose, you get to like bring Rex back into your party for a little bit of Mass Effect 3, so you can have some fun with that, and then just like the banter that all your crewmates have at the house party together, and just like hanging out with them even one-on-one in the lead up to that is just a ton of fun. Phenomenal. Like I stand by that 3 is my favorite game, but it's largely because like I just view the whole game as like a wonderful send-off to everything. Like 2 is absolutely a better standalone experience, but if you've been with these characters for games 1 and 2, then 3 is just like an entire love letter to them. And Citadel is like the feather in the cap of that. So had a great time. when I was getting frustrated with Stonefly, I would basically like turn it off, and then I started up my Renegade run of Mass Effect, starting with 1, trying to do it on Insanity because I got the platinum in all 3 of the games. Annoyingly, with the 3rd game, you have to like start. You have to start like a second run because one of the trophies is like level up your weapon to level 10, and you can't do that unless you do a New Game Plus. Like the weapons won't go up until will cap out at level 5. So I was like, that's annoying. So I just kind of like
I think
raced
that's
through
the
the opening
multiplayer.
game. It's no,
Because
no.
I think you could level up your weapons and
No, it was the same
level up
in the
weapons
original one.
multiplayer?
Like
Okay.
your weapons and everything only go up to level 5 in your first playthrough, and they will like in order to like help entice a second playthrough. It was like, hey, yeah, like when you get that gun again in New Game Plus, you'll get like a couple extra levels on it, and you can get up to level 10 on the weapons. So yeah, it was dumb, but whatever. I basically like played through the first couple missions again to get to the point where I could buy the guns, buy the gun upgrades and get my platinum trophy on that. But yeah, now I'm going through for the Insanity trophies, as well as I need like one of the other Paramore trophies, because despite trying to romance Liara through all 3 games, it didn't count the one in Mass Effect 2, and I was very mad about that. So I was like, because of, I guess, the order of operations. Like, you can do it, but because I did like the Shadow Broker stuff early enough in the game, it didn't count it as like re-romancing her. So I was like, lame, but whatever. So we'll see who I romance in my Renegade run, but having a good time with that. So any final thoughts there on Mass Effect, Cam?
Yeah, I will say my final thoughts really come down to, replaying Mass Effect 2 in a much higher definition and everything. I've seen a lot of like kind of like I would call them posing errors in certain cutscenes. Like certain cutscenes just like don't make sense anymore, because like you realize. I look back and I realize they utilized the fact that like the way that characters did things and models and stuff were so rough around those edges that you ignored some really like just like I don't understand what's going on in this scene. People are just being posed very weird, and you just like let that go because of the time, 360 PS3 era. That now in like the light of day, cold light of modern day, just does not fit as well. So I don't want to say that these games are perfect. Because like of course they were created in the vacuum of their time, but I will say that the improvements that they've made to the game, like the games overall, I have to say are stupendous, and I really like. I'm just enjoying my time with it. Like I play through a mission or 2 every night, and I'm just enjoying my time with it. So
nice, yeah. It's I experienced one today where I was as I was like replaying stuff on the Citadel in Mass Effect 1. My shepherd was having a conversation with Samesh Bhatia or whatever, who's the guy who's looking to get his wife's body released back to Earth or whatever, and Shepard was having a conversation and like pointing and stuff like that, and because of how I was just kind of like clicking through some of the dialogue, like it froze like with her like midpoint, and every like for the rest of the conversation she was just like
yep,
her hand up there, like finger guns in the air kind of thing. She's like, this is weird, whatever, just move on, move through it. Well, cool. Well, with that, we will let you go, Cam. So you can bounce off, and then Frank and I will close out the show with my thoughts on Bo Burnham's Inside. So
ignore the fact that I'm leaving at exactly 4:20.
Nice.
Nice. See you guys later.
All right.
Love you.
Have a good one, Cam.
Bye.
Bye.
And we're back, hopefully seamlessly. Hopefully I just cut out all of this middle stuff. And Frank and I are back to close out the show. Cam had to leave early, as I said. And so
At a suspicious time.
At a very suspicious time, yeah. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is Bo Burnham's Inside, the new special he had go up on Netflix over Memorial Day weekend last weekend. A very fascinating piece. Before we dive into it, what's your history with Bo Burnham, Frank?
Yeah, so I was been a fan of his for a long time. He had a Comedy Central Presents back when those were still going, and he had like not like one of the early ones, but he had like a really early one from like the 2000s. and it's great. I honestly think it's one of the best ones they ever did. Like I watch those religiously, and there's a couple episodes that I thought like these are like the best ones, and he has that, and he does the thing where he plays the piano. I don't know if you've seen that one in
Yeah.
particular, but he
Yep.
plays the piano. He does all his old bits. It was like a best of.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did his stand-up special a couple years after that. I believe it was called Word, I think, which was like his hour-long special that was like just for him. And I watched that too, and I've been a big fan for a long time, but I've fallen off in more recent years as he's done some kind of gone back online and done some more of this stuff. And like I think his last special before this, I don't think I've seen, and I haven't seen this one. And although, again, I love him. I think he's a genius, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I just like, I'm almost at this point, or for my own headspace, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle this right now. So maybe one day, but I don't know if I can watch it right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. So yeah, I remember like him kind of his start being on like YouTube, and him being like a YouTube comedian and just blowing up on YouTube and seeing his videos and seeing his songs and being like, this guy's really funny, and then getting picked up for those like the Comedy Central specials and stuff like that, and then going in and doing the tour circuit and stuff. Like never seen him live or anything like that, but seeing like the specials from his live shows. And then and in particular, I was very fascinated by his last special because he really like moved into a performance art realm as opposed to just straightforward comedy. And I remember like I studied a lot of performance art in college in my theater classes, very pretentious, like let's like look at all these performance artists from the 80s who were pushing the envelope for like what it meant to be, a performer, what it meant to be like a comedian or something like that. Like people like Eric Bogosian, who would go out there and do monologues, but not like monologues as himself, not doing a stand-up set, but doing like characters. And he would do like, he'd have like 10 different monologues, and he'd just be different characters and stuff like that. And there were elements of that I was seeing of those like performance art classes I'd taken at college in what I was seeing Bo Burnham like do in his more like later years as he was developing and kind of like refining his voice. He was very much hitting that. Like a lot of his stuff in the last special or two has been like the dialogue that he has with the audience, and the pressures that the audience puts on him to be funny and to make him laugh, and the fact that he doesn't get to like put that same level of pressure back on them or that kind of stuff is like the examination that he's been doing with that is very fascinating. So seeing Inside, which is the newest one, that is effectively that voice that he has honed and started kind of crafting, that is more intellectual re-examination of a lot of stuff, but having him have to like be forced effectively to go back to his roots of performing these things just for a camera, no audience, back when he's basically like in his bedroom writing those early YouTube songs and stuff like that. So Inside is effectively, for those that don't know, he basically like sequestered himself in a almost like a studio apartment effectively, to work on this special during the pandemic. And it's basically like it's him with the equipment. He's the camera, the operator, the editor. Like he basically worked on this almost in isolation. And so there's a lot of it that is him examining what it's like to be a comedian without an audience again, or now even. Because he's also definitely like reflecting back on his career, and there are numbers where he's confronting the notion of like cancel culture or whatever, and confronting the ideas of like the things he thought were edgy and like cool to do when he was a 16-year-old. Like he has a refrain that's basically like, why didn't anybody hold me accountable? Why won't somebody hold me accountable, or something like that? And it's like a fascinating self-examination, but also it's just this weird time capsule of the year in quarantine. Like you see him very clearly at very different stages of like hair length and stuff throughout the year. The apartment that he's seemingly rented or whatever for this special, and that he's just kind of like confined himself to. And I don't know if he like stayed there the whole time or whatnot, but the narrative that he tells over the course of the special is that he is there. He doesn't leave. He has some kind of contact with the outside world because props and stuff kind of come in and out, but the whole thing is shot pretty much in that studio apartment. using different angles, and he uses like a lot of self, like he's running lights himself. He's using foot pedals to like trigger spotlights or something, or he's just holding a phone behind him, and then like when he wants to shine a light, he flashes it out or something, and he like plays around with a lot of that in really clever ways. And it's a very fascinating self-examination of his own kind of career and the stage he's at. He talks about the idea of like he didn't think he was going to do another special, but he made the decision to do this one. There's like a little check-in, at some point where like he's just sitting there and like basically it's just him on a stool with like a clock next to him that's about to hit midnight, and he's reflecting on how he's been doing this thing for 6 months now, and he wanted to be done before he turned 30, but he's going to turn 30 when that clock hits midnight. And so he just kind of sits there with that, and the clock turns, and he's just like, yay, and then moves on to the next segment and stuff. And so it's a very fascinating look. There is like, the Netflix does have like, the content warnings of like suicide and language, because he does talk about, it being tough and there being like very bad mental days. And then, he'll switch to the next scene and be like, so, hey, like just so everybody, like, I'm not going to kill myself. Like, that's not, and like, but even that, there's like a meta narrative to it of like, I don't know what his actual relationship with his mental health is, so I hope he's working on it and doing whatever he needs to do with it. There's a lot of like, I mean, there's some great songs in there just in general, that stand out. One in particular is, and I think he has put this one out on his YouTube, but it's basically like, the internet has everything all of the time, like, and it's sung in the style of like a Carney Barker kind of thing. It's like it's got a very like kind of jazzy thing, da 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 da, and it's basically like like I say Carnival Barker because it's basically told in the vein of like a Carnival Barker saying like, here's everything the internet has for you. It has something for everybody. If you're bored by this, you would be the first person in the world to be bored by the internet. And then it turns into like this weird little sinister thing about how like it wasn't always like this, and here's like the seedy underbelly, and it's probably my favorite song from the thing. So I appreciate that, like that's the one that he's like clipped out himself. But yeah, there's just a lot of fascinating things. He also like starts poking at Twitch streamer culture a little bit. Like he creates a let's play kind of thing of him playing him in a scene. That's a fascinating little thing. He does reaction videos where he does a little song and then he does a reaction to it, and then his reaction starts becoming the reaction video. So he does like 3 layers deep of a reaction of a reaction of a reaction. That is like funny, and it shows like just the different layers that he's putting into an idea. Very visibly it says like, okay, here's the song, now here's like, I'm gonna do a funny reactions thing, and then now I'm gonna comment on the funny reactions thing that I did, and now I'm gonna comment on how I'm commenting on the funny reaction thing that I did, and like what each of those layers of it means for him. Yeah, I watched it a second time basically like today. I watched it like the first time over a couple days over the last week, and then I just kind of sat down and watched it again today, and then I've gone back and watched like some of my favorite segments of it. And yeah, it's just like it's an interesting examination that he's doing of himself, as well as like there are a couple songs that are basically like the life that we've had to live for this last year. So he's got a song about like FaceTiming with his mom, or like laughing when, or like telling jokes when, is it okay to be funny anymore or something like that in this world that we're living in. He has a sketch that's basically like him as a social brand manager talking about how all of the brands are now getting in on all these social topics that have, flared up in recent years and what that means. And they're kind of very deconstructing that. Another great song is basically like, him reciting a whole bunch of things that are in a white woman's Instagram profiles, and then like acting them out as best he could in a studio apartment kind of thing scenario. So yeah, like I really enjoyed it. I think it is a great piece of content that is an examination of the quarantine times, of him as a performer, as an artist, and what his relationship with that, because he is, obviously with stuff like Eighth Grade, he has been, branching out and becoming more, doing more dramedy stuff. But he still has, an incredible intelligence and comedic mindset to him, and just the way he created this whole thing kind of like in with himself over the course of seemingly the full year, basically confronting. And again, you see like multiple stages very clearly, like, okay, he clearly did this, he came up with this idea a couple months into this project. And then like by the end where he does a lot throughout, he like rewatches elements of the special and reacts to them in interesting ways that give you like, even with like the subtlest looks and glances and stuff, just a peek into his own mindset of like how he views himself as a creator. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I recommend it to anybody who is a fan of Bo Burnham, but with the caveat of like, yeah, he definitely like dives into some heavier and like I mean the topic of suicide comes up multiple times throughout, and as well as just like how fucking difficult everything has been for the last year for everybody. Yep. And a lot of it is like he fully recognizes that as a white guy, he's had it way easier than most. And so there's an element even of like trying to use his white privilege to elevate some of these ideas, but also poking fun at the idea of white people trying to use their privilege to elevate. Like there's a lot of layers to the thing that I look forward to like continuing to examine as I continue to like rewatch and pick it apart myself. So yeah, highly recommend anybody who is a fan of Bo Burnham, but especially if you are a fan of like the trajectory that Bo Burnham has been on for the last couple things. I think it's incredibly fascinating, and he still manages to do a really good job with like the production value in this like confined space that he's doing things in. Because you can tell like there are some things where it's like very clear he just shows you like an almost unedited one take of probably 10 that he tried or something like that. But then there are others where he definitely has a lot of fun with like, cutting from camera angles, even though he's clearly only working with one camera really. And so how he, managed to make all that stuff work. So yeah. Any questions or anything before we wrap up there, Frank?
So I know you had mentioned there you'd already rewatched it twice, and you were probably planning on going back again. Like, do you think this is something you think you'll consistently go back to, either for entertainment, or are you just trying to get more out of it? Like, that's kind of two questions there, I guess, but that's kind of my point.
Yeah, so Bo Burnham isn't like, if I get in a mood for Bo Burnham, I'll go and like find YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I'll go listen to his songs. It's been a while since I've gone back and like rewatched his earlier specials or anything like that. In part, I think because of an availability thing. Like the only ones I'd really have easy access to would be whatever's on Netflix, probably. And there's just like a million other things on Netflix that like, I mean, on that topic in particular, I'm probably more likely to go and like rewatch a John Mulaney thing, just because I enjoy his humor and it, like a lot of Bo's stuff in particular can be hit or miss for me, where like some of the things like when he's on and like when I'm relating to a song he's doing or something like that, like it's on all cylinders. But like another one that like I rewatched a couple days ago or something is like him pretending to be Kanye for like, he does a sequence that's basically like he went to a Kanye concert and Kanye ended his whole thing with like a 20-minute rant while music was playing and his auto-tune was happening, and so he kind of does like, he tells that story and then he does like his version of that, and like it just doesn't have as much mileage for me because I don't care about Kanye at all. But then B, just like the extra little layer of it just doesn't really click for me. But there are definitely a handful of songs from this one that I just find myself like thinking about and being catchy. So like if it gets released as an album, I will probably like throw that album on pretty quickly, as opposed to like, because it's just harder to do in a Netflix special of being like, well, I want to go and listen to this song in particular. Let me scrub through and try and figure out where it was in the special, because it doesn't have like chapter selection or something like that. So,
And there's nobody in the comments to put timestamps.
exactly, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, this is also how I often consume music, is that I will like listen to the same album over and over and over again. I mean, like, look at something like Hamilton. I probably listened to that nonstop for like months on end. So this is the kind of thing I might just like. This is the kind of thing that will be great to have on the background playing as I continue replaying Mass Effect again or something like that. Because I don't need to focus completely on either thing. I can just enjoy, you know, hearing the and he even that is like, he makes a joke about like, how are you listening to me? Am I like you know, are you sitting on the couch, or are you on your phone watching or whatever, like, or am I just background noise or something like that? And so there will be an element of like, yeah, he's going to be background noise a little bit. But yeah, like, part of it is, oh, maybe I should go back and rewatch his last special, because I did really enjoy, you know, the beginning stages of this more self-reflection, performance art voice that he's kind of examining, that I think he just does a great job of like really enhancing on in every way in this version. So yeah, I mean, like, I can see myself doing both. There will be bits and pieces that I'll just be like, oh, I want to listen to his internet song again. So maybe I'll find that on YouTube and just like watch that, or just even like, you know, find an audio version of that. But then there are elements where like there are just like really good sequences that he has that would be fun to sit down and just rewatch. I don't know like how often I would do that, because I mean, with everything else that's out there as content, yeah. I'm not often going back and like rewatching specials and stuff like that. It tends to be like a, when the mood strikes and I can't find anything else I want to watch, I'll throw that on. But I also, if that's the case, I'm way more inclined to find a video game that I'm going to play anyway. So maybe this will be I'll have this on as a second screen experience kind of thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think that was pretty much it. But I'm definitely I'm glad to hear you talk about it and just kind of your opinion, because like I know I've heard a couple other people talk about it too, and like I it's kind of like on the backlog of whatever video entertainment, I guess, like if we just want to call it a backlog, where like, because like I love Bo and I definitely want to get to that point, but it's like it's one of those things where the more you told me about it, the more interested I am in it, and the more I'm like, maybe I could definitely handle it. But it's like, even like you said, like those content warnings, and I'm just like, but it's like, I was like, now's not the perfect time. Maybe later, like once we're out of this and things are better. I'm like, but I was like, for me, I was like, it seems a little bit intense, but that's definitely the kind of guy he is, and I think that's almost like important, because it's really interesting, it's fascinating, even, you know, like you said, the things he kind of dives into and picks apart. And that's one of those things I always kind of found with a lot of the comedy people I follow, or not everyone, but some people, it's like they're really good at drama, or they are kind of have this intense darker side, and it's like, you know, there's just like more going on there than just like haha jokes or songs, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely something that if I had watched this 3 months ago, like it would have really probably been a lot harder to watch. And the fact that I have been vaccinated for, you know, a month plus now, and I have, you know, gone out to the bars, I have been able to like see family and stuff again. Like that certainly made this way more digestible than it would have been otherwise if I had still been in that like trapped mindset that I think a lot of us have been in for the last year. So yeah, like definitely, if that is, you know, a place where you're at where that is going to make things hard, it is a very claustrophobic show. I will absolutely say that. And that like, that does not change. So if claustrophobia is not the experience you're looking for, then maybe hold off on this. Like and another example for me right now is I would have loved nothing more than to go back out to Alamo Drafthouse this weekend. And in particular, like I love the first Quiet Place movie, and I would love to go see A Quiet Place 2, but I know that like that is a stressful enough experience that I do not want that to be my first movie back. And at the same time, I did not want Cruella to be my first movie back. So like
that's why your first movie back is officially going to be Fast 9.
It's actually probably going to be In the Heights, but that's like the same weekend as Fast 9. Movie. So yeah, but it's like it's that kind of thing. It's like once I've like got that out of the way, out of my system, then maybe I'll consider putting myself in that like very stress-filled mindset for A Quiet Place 2. But I just can't I can't let that be the first thing that gets me back into the world. So yeah, I fully so it Bo Burnham Inside could be the exact same kind of thing for you. Of like if you are still very much in a place where you're trapped and you just haven't been able to really get out and start exploring and experiencing the world again, this might not be the right first, special back. But once you've got if you can get yourself into a headspace where like you're okay addressing those kinds of ideas, and a lot of it is like the conversations he's having with himself, then I think there's a lot to enjoy about the examination, and there is a lot to it that is like, thank God I don't. He's saying this, so now I feel less alone for having thought it and felt it for the last year.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. A lot of the ludicrousy of just stuff that has happened in the last year.
That's important.
Like,
so you don't feel like you're alone.
Joke about because of everything else that was going on. The fact that he's almost making some of these things okay to joke about again, and not that they like are or aren't or whatever, but like the fact that he's joking about them in the same way that maybe I wanted to joke about them or certain things, but like he'll take the hit because he is a richer white guy, and I'm a poorer white guy, and so I can laugh at him making the joke that I maybe wanted to make or something like that, while still recognizing like that we're all still stupid white guys. And I mean, like he definitely confronts that idea like a lot throughout the piece of like, hey, white guys have been kind of controlling the narrative in this conversation for 400 years, so maybe we should shut the fuck up. And then, like, silence for a few seconds, and then he kind of comes back with, like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to talk anyway. Because that's the experience we've seen all over the place this last year. So, yeah, it's a very fascinating special. And again, I think it is a very apt and appropriate continuation of the direction that his career has been going, while also weirdly looking back on where his career has come from. And again, that I don't even know necessarily how much he's confronting the idea himself, but especially as I was rewatching it and thinking back to like, because there is a lot of like, what is the relationship of a comedian when the comedian doesn't have an audience? And then if you like, which absolutely fits for where he's been, the last 5 years or whatever. But then if you like look back to the beginning of his career where he was a comedian without an audience or without an audience there in person that was reacting to him, it very much is like a return to form for him almost, because he was doing this all, without an audience, like gauging whether or not something he was doing was funny. It is like his first songs that he put up on YouTube were basically for an audience of one that ended up blowing up because they resonated with a lot of other people. But this is very much, a return to that almost. So yeah, very fascinating stuff. And I mean, I would definitely recommend it to anybody, assuming that you're okay with that, content warning and stuff. But especially if you're a fan of Bo's, or have been a fan of Bo's for a long time, I think it's an incredible, interesting examination about his career in general. But even if you're not, there's enough there being said about this last year that we almost all collectively went through that I think it's a very interesting piece in and of itself right there. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Bo Burnham's Inside. Check it out, and yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode as a whole. Thank you, Frank, for joining me. Thank Cam for joining me earlier as well. He had a hard out, so he had to bounce off pretty before we could finish everything up. But it was good, kind of hearing his updated thoughts on Mass Effect and stuff. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. I will go ahead and do the plugs that he usually does for himself. You can follow his Twitch streams at twitch.tv/Rev Cabot on Monday and Wednesday nights, usually around 6 p.m. Pacific time. On Mondays, I believe he's right now playing through Mass Effect, doing basically a full playthrough on stream. And then Wednesdays, I believe, is when he's playing Yakuza Kiwami, which, again, we also talked about earlier. So you can go check out those streams at twitch.tv/RevCabot. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give some love to there, Frank?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to our other podcast, That D Plus Show. This week. It should be coming out, I believe, after, or no, it's already up actually.
Yep.
Now I got my timeline wrong. It's already up now, so you can go listen to it. But we put up an episode for Star Wars: A New Hope. We are kicking off Summer of Star Wars, and we are going in release order, which we all agree was the the correct order. You can leave your comments below about how you feel about that, but yeah, that's yeah, I thought it was a great episode, and I'm excited to keep going through the series. Although here's the thing, so when you mentioned it to me and I was excited about it, I had like a New Hope and a Rogue One and stuff in mind. Now I've been thinking lately about how like there's Attack of the Clones and Rise of Skywalker, and like some of these movies I never thought I was going to watch some of these movies again ever in my entire life, like, but here we are.
Yeah, July is going to be a little bit of a rough month for us, I think. But we'll see. Yeah, I mean, like, even though I'm definitely not going to like some of the movies that we sit down and watch, I will enjoy talking about them with you guys, and I will enjoy doing the show about them. So I can kind of like hang my hat on that. I can sit through really boring politics stuff in Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones for the fact that I'll be able to, shoot the shit with you and Frank, or you and Logan and Cameron about that. So yeah, check out our Summer of Star Wars over on that D Plus show. As Frank said there, we're doing all of the Skywalker saga in release order. So it's going to be our first 9 episodes. And then we're also going to do the one-offs like Rogue One, like Solo, and probably the Clone Wars, as well as, I believe, the Empire of Dreams special that was basically like a documentary about the first, the original trilogy. So basically, yeah, like lots of Star Wars over on that D Plus show for the next few months. So check that out either on YouTube or on the podcast feeds for that D Plus show. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and echoing that shout out, I will also shout out our Let's Plays that go up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Logan and I have we just started playing through Operation Tango, which is a PS Plus game this month if you have a PS5, and the PS5 version is a PS Plus game. So even if you don't have your PS5 yet, you can go claim the game and it will be there waiting for you. You just can't play it on your PS4.
I recommend everybody do that. I did.
Yeah.
Consistently all year, been locking up all the PS5 games for when I get one. I'll have a whole lineup, just like you should.
Yep, exactly. You'll have Bug Snacks ready to go when you're there. You'll have Destruction All Stars ready to not ever play like everybody else. You'll have Oddworld if you want to get into that, and Maneater, yeah. Go. And Operation Tango is one that like Logan and I hopped into. Obviously, like we spent a ton of time over this the last couple months playing through It Takes Two co-op, and we started doing Overcooked as co-op, and basically like Operation Tango came out and was like, do you want to check this out? Like it's a co-op experience. I know nothing about it, and it's very fascinating because it's basically like me and Logan are playing 2 characters and we can't see what either one is doing. So like Logan is the secret agent and I'm the hacker, and like Logan will go into an area and I'll basically have to like hack into the system and help kind of like navigate him through, but I can't see what he's seeing, so I can only kind of like we basically have to be very diligent about what we're talking about as we kind of describe like what we're seeing, what we're doing. And so it's a really cool, it's that kind of asynchronous gameplay thing that you would see also in games like Stop Talking and Nobody Explodes, or Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, whatever that one is, where it's like, it's like, I remember it being like a VR title where it's like, okay, somebody's in VR and they can see the bomb, and somebody else is out of VR and has like the manual, and so the person is describing the bomb, and the other person is like saying, okay, well, here are the wires you need to cut, and that kind of experience. So it's really cool. We sat down and filmed our second episode of that today, and this time we captured Logan's gameplay. So I'm going to try and do what I can to like edit the 2 together. So like when it's more imperative that you see what Logan is seeing, it's going to be a much more dynamic experience. So yeah, check that out. YouTube.com/thatnerdysite. That's one of our current series that we have. I also the episode that goes up tomorrow after this episode goes live is going to be like my first hour of Stonefly, where I was not as cooled on it as I was in this episode yet, but I sat down and recorded my first hour with that, so you can go check that out as well, and basically get a sense of like, hey, is this the kind of gameplay that might appeal to you or something like that. So yeah, check out all that, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. New Let's Plays go up Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the video versions of all our podcasts go up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday alongside the audio versions of the shows. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site and check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content from us, including all of those things. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, and maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. This month's early access episode is me and Cameron sitting down with the first hour or so of Final Fantasy XIV in a Let's Play style podcast. So you can go check that out if you are one of our Patreon supporters. Otherwise, that'll go live to everybody at the end of June here. Thank you again, Frank, for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Cool. Good.
Yeah, no.